Hello, and welcome to another episode of Scavenger Life. This is episode number 203 at scavengerlife.com.
So, Ryan, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Are you ready?
Are you ready for the knowledge I want to break down
Yeah.
right here?
I don't know about that.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to all the little trash shelves out there like us. If you're selling on eBay and you're selling full time, you found the right place. Like, we're full-time eBay sellers.
Yes.
And I always want to remind people that this is probably not like some of the other things that are online. This is not a how-to or like a coaching thing. This is more of like a diary.
Yes. A personal diary.
Yeah, of just how two people happen to figure out how to sell on eBay for a living. And we don't expect this to fit into everyone's lifestyle. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. I've kind of mentioned it before, this idea of like there's this equation.
Right.
This like scavenger equation that each of us have to kind of figure out how we fit in to that. So I kind of wanted to talk about it.
And the equation's different for everyone.
Right.
I mean, that's how it should be.
Right, because our circumstances are different. And that's why I think we could never do like a system that we tell people exactly how to do it, because
Right.
each of our lives it's different. Where we live, our circumstances, how much money we owe, how much money we need,
Right.
If someone's helping us.
Exactly.
All that stuff. So we thought we'd kind of break that down.
Right.
And it's kind of funny for two art kids to talk about math, but that's what we're going to try and do
To talk
here.
about our equation.
Yeah, and it's not really, we don't really have it kind of fully formed, but I thought I would just break it down and then other people could maybe help add to the different parts of, maybe there are different parts of the equation that we haven't thought of.
Right.
One of the biggest parts of the equation is time.
Yes.
And that is, how much time do you have to spend scavenging and listing and selling on eBay?
Right. Right.
And that's one reason why I think we've been successful, is because there's a point in time where we were like, let's just spend all of our time doing this.
Right.
And because we were able to do that, we could throw all this time and energy into it that paid off at the end. It was like this self-fulfilling cycle.
I think also with scavenging, there's this like weird serendipity that happens with finding stuff, and I forget that a lot of times.
Yep.
Where if you hadn't have walked into that thrift store at that time when they were putting out this object,
right,
you never would have found that because you didn't have time at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday. Yep. When no one else was shopping.
I didn't even have that down here. That's exactly right. I mean, part of the cool thing about being able just to go out on kind of an open-ended scavenger run is that you never know what's going to happen. And if we didn't have that kind of freedom and be able to invest that kind of time, I mean, I can think of numerous times where we just kind of stumbled someplace. Yeah. Because we were trying to go someplace else, and just suddenly we find a carload of awesome stuff. Yeah. That then takes us a week to list, but then makes us thousands of dollars.
Right, and we've talked about that before, where it's like self-fulfilling cycle, where because you're a scavenger, you have time, and because you have time, you're a scavenger. Like, right. It's And
I bring this up because we see people on the blog who talk. They have a totally different. For them, time is different, right, where they have a full-time job. Yeah. So they're scavenging on their lunch break, right, at the local Goodwill. Right.
And serendipity can happen then, too.
Sure.
Of course.
But, again, that's going to be much different. I mean, what they get out of it is going to be so much different because of the amount of time they're able to put into it,
And that's not to say, well, we can shop all the time and we shop all the time. Because you want to limit that, like we always say, because you don't want to shop so much you've overwhelmed yourself and become a hoarder.
Well, the part of time, too, is then, I mean, I would say these days, scavenging, it might even just be 10% of our time.
Right, because we've built up a lot of stuff to list.
Yeah, because we still have a lot of unlisted inventory, and because, not to toot our own horn, but because I think we've gotten to be pretty good scavengers. and we've kind of found some really good spots that are good again and again.
Right.
We only need to go 10% of our time to get a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, it would be different, like in the early days, we had to spend a lot more time scavenging because we were just still trying to figure out
what are we doing. Yeah. What are we even looking for? Are we looking for this? I don't know. Get it.
So then a part of the time, the other 90% is spent like a listing.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, that's really a big part of our time.
That's a huge part of it.
Like this past week, and we'll talk about it more, but you know, this past week we were spending, this was a full-time eBay week, and most of that was just 8 hours a day of
I think that's pushing it, 8 hours.
Was it?
Well, I think our day is broken up into different parts of it.
Right.
Because I'm shipping stuff in the morning.
Right.
You know, you're photographing, I'm listing, and then shipping stuff at night too. So, But yeah, every single day was doing that.
So, you know, our equation is going to be different for people, again, who, for whatever reason, can only spend 2 hours at night.
Right.
Or, you know, part of a Saturday or something like that. You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think that's the thing, is we can't all have the same expectations if we're all bringing a different amount of time into the a system.
And it's different if it's two people like us or it's just one person working on their own. That's a different, you know, equation as well.
Right. And you know, and things like, I mean, one part of the equation is like kids.
Right.
You know, we don't have kids, so we don't spend any time having to take care of kids. You know?
Which to some people I think is like crazy. They're like, you what?
I'm always amazed when I see people talk about, you know, they're running pretty hefty eBay stores, and yet they're taking care of one or multiple children.
1 to 5 children.
All these like homeschool moms, you know, it's like incredible.
Incredible. It's amazing. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. But, you know, that's another part of the equation, you know, like, are these kids, are they so young where they're taking up all your time, or are they older and maybe they're even helping you know?
Learning the process, helping scavenge, helping take photos,
but that's
having their own stores.
Right. And, you know, things like a vehicle. You know, I guess I'm always like, oh, of course, everyone has a car. But there was like one person on the blog recently that was talking about like her boyfriend or husband like took their only car to work, so she couldn't scavenge during the day. So she could only scavenge like on the weekends, and her boyfriend or husband didn't want to do that because he wanted to do something else.
Yeah.
So she just couldn't get anywhere to scavenge, you know? So yeah, a vehicle is a pretty big
living in a rural area, we don't think twice about that because you have to have a vehicle here. Like, you know, the store is like 5 miles away.
Right.
You know, you couldn't even get there. You know,
the only person I think that we've heard, and maybe she has a car, would be
Flim in New York.
Yeah, so it sounds like she just hops on the subway.
Yeah. She's
got her spots where she goes to, you know.
She's got her grandma cart.
She's got a bunch of bags or whatever. Grandma. She has a grandma cart?
No, I'm just picturing it.
It'd be cool.
We call it the grandma cart because it's like the grocery cart that you have to have when you live in New York to carry around your laundry, your groceries, your scavenging.
So I guess that could work.
Yeah.
I mean, another big part of the equation is storage.
Storage is a huge
I think for a lot of it's new people. I know this is true for us. I mean, I just don't think we realize how important storage would be. Although it quickly hit us.
Yes.
And again, this is another secret to our success, is that we quickly learned how important having a lot of storage was. So for us, we've talked about it. I mean, we've kind of chosen to live in like a rural place where we almost have unlimited storage.
It's unlimited in the fact that it's so cheap to either rent storage or pop another building in your backyard.
Or to build is more storage. Like, it's relatively cheap. And, you know, I was hearing about this guy who said that he's spending $500 a month for a locker. And I'm assuming because he lives in a expensive urban area.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a much different part of the equation than us.
Right.
And so that's a big... it's pressure point that makes him think about his business much differently than we do.
He's got to move stuff faster.
He can't do his business like we do our business because, I mean, we don't have that. It's pressure to get rid of stuff,
right,
you know?
Right.
So, and that's why, you know, I hear a lot of people like they're working out of a closet.
Yep.
Because maybe they have roommates or they live in a studio apartment and they're like, I have this closet and that's what I'm working
and
out
I
of.
only buy small things. I can't buy furniture. I can't buy lamps, you know.
You know, and some people just work out of an extra room that they have, you know,
That's how we started.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people in a suburban area have like an extra bedroom or something.
Or a basement.
Room.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, and then some people actually have a walkout its basement, and I've seen those videos online where people have like a whole walkout its basement.
Right.
And that's
it's like almost a finished basement. Yeah, essentially.
And that's become their like eBay empire.
Right.
And that's awesome.
And Jay's really jealous of that because we do not have a basement. We do have a second building. Yeah. But we don't have a basement.
I would love a walkout basement.
Let's dig out a basement.
Yeah, so, you know, I think that's the other thing. I mean, you know, if you don't solve that storage issue and grow your storage, then you have to then move things faster.
Right.
And much faster than what we do.
Yeah.
You know?
Because our whole philosophy is list it and forget it.
Yeah. Because we're like,
I showed a purse that I had listed like 5 years ago that sold this week. It was like, and people will see it on the video, but, you know, that's a little extreme.
I mean,
but
that's a very extreme example of how long we're willing to hold on to something. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that because I did some numbers on that. But storage is another thing, you know, like that's what a person needs to think about. And that's really the point where a seller decides like this isn't just like a hobby or I'm making a little bit of extra cash on the side. Yeah. When you start investing or it's really thinking about storage, that's when it's like...
It's a turning point.
This is a real thing for me.
Yeah, you have to decide, is this a real thing? Am I just in, you know, one tiny little closet and there's a bin in the closet?
Right.
Or am I, you know, gonna kit out my basement?
Right. Exactly.
You know?
Or buy... I mean, I've heard of people, because that's what we did, of like... Okay, we're going to move and get a different house. Yeah. And we're going to buy this house with having an eBay business in mind.
When we bought it.
Meaning we're going to buy a house that has like an extra building.
Right.
Or has some extra land or whatever.
Or
you know?
like my mom has a 1,000 square foot basement.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, okay, that works.
Now there's another part of the equation, and I call it like the friendliness of your home life to scavenging, you know?
Interesting.
And I've heard people on the blog talk about this. Yeah. Like, you know, a woman's in her home and she has a husband and her kids that like laugh at her for bringing stuff home and selling things on eBay.
Or think she's crazy.
Yeah, or like don't feel supportive of her.
Right.
Like...
Until the cha-ching start.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Or same thing could be for a man, too.
Right.
We've heard husbands who's like, you know...
Whose wives think they're like trash hoarders.
Right. Like
what are you doing?
Quit bringing all this stuff home, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and so like we live in a home where this is a totally pro-scavenger home.
Although sometimes we do get a little cranky with each other for leaving things for too long, you know?
Right.
You know, but...
Well, but see, that's in the equation, though. Part of it is it's not so bad to have somebody check you.
Right.
Because it is possible for all of us to, like, over-scavenge, you know? And so sometimes it's good to have a partner who's like...
Let's move this out here.
This stuff has been here for like 6 months.
Yeah,
I mean, are you running a business or is this just like a dumping ground?
Right,
you know?
Exactly.
But, I mean, that is an important part to think about is that, you know, are you personally organized and committed to getting stuff sold, you know? Or are you disorganized and like a borderline hoarder who just loves to buy stuff? You know?
Right.
And, you know, there have been times where if someone were to have walked into our house, it would have looked like a troll lived in our home.
Yeah,
you know?
It's just like overrun by merchandise in like 3 different rooms.
You know, and we've had to like check ourselves and been like, okay, let's spend all day getting rid of stuff that we think doesn't need to get sold, or we put things in bins, and then these bins will go into storage.
Yeah, I think you're the best at that. Any unlisted stuff either is getting photographed this week, or it's in a bin and it's in storage.
Like we have 6 big plastic bins of a women's clothes. God. A lot of it we had scavenged like 5 years ago, and it's like cool, like 80s skirts and dresses.
And I went through that once and called it. So I already cleared out a bunch of stuff I didn't want. And the hilarious thing was, I gave it to the thrift store closest to us, and then I saw it on some other people's stores that we follow.
Really?
Yeah. That I was like, oh yeah, she definitely bought that,
Yeah.
So
but those are things where, like, I think I've told you, we need to either make a choice. Either we're going to list that it's this summertime or this year, or we just don't.
It's got to go away.
Yeah, like, if it's not exciting to us, like, there's no sense.
If we put it off this long, it's like, why?
Its differences in each of our lives really will depend on where its pressure is.
Right.
So, like, we have no storage costs for the most part, so we have no its pressure to dump. I mean, we moved to a rural area and have chosen to stay here because our living costs are low.
Right.
And it fits really well for our eBay life. You know? I mean, we could, have chosen to move back to another urban area because we like to live in a city. But we decided, like, we don't actually need to be around all that culture.
Right.
Because we don't have a lot of its pressure being here.
Right. It's like such a mellow life compared to being in the city. And we love to visit cities, and that's good enough for us.
I mean, another thing is a location. I mean, we do say that, and we believe that you can scavenge anywhere.
Yeah.
Because we traveled a lot of parts of America, and we've scavenged everywhere we've gone, and we've always found something. But we do happen to live on the East Coast.
Which is pretty dense.
Yeah, and so it's like a really dense part of America, and there's just like all these homes bursting with stuff, and it was like the baby boomers and the older generation are dying off. I mean, this stuff is like circulating back out into society.
Yep.
So that's another thing. So I think the other thing is that people, when they talk about this, they need to first actually ask the right question, and that is like, what problem are they trying to solve? Like, are they trying to say, I don't want to work a job anymore.
Right.
Or is this just like extra income?
Right.
I feel like a lot of people haven't really thought that part of it out. It seems like, and they might not even said this, but it seems like the attitude is just, I want to be rich.
Yeah, it's not very well thought out. I guess that there comes a point too where you have to kind of make a decision on, is it just part-time? Because I hear a lot of people being like, how do I make more money even though I have a full-time job?
Right.
And have limited time to do this. And it's like, well.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think gets confusing, is that they haven't really thought through the equation. It's like they want it all to work when the equation doesn't make sense. Like, they only want to put 2 hours a week into scavenging. They only want to go to one place, to a Goodwill, and they want
find it all.
And they want to find everything good for really cheap with no competition. And then they only want to list for an hour a week.
Right.
And then
they want to make $1,000 a week.
And they want everything to sell. It's within 2 weeks, or else they start kind of freaking out. You know? And it's just like, people like that, you're setting yourself up for just like a lot of disappointment. I think the better sellers that I listen to are people that have like real goals. Things like, we have 3 kids and we're trying to send them to private school.
Right.
And so we have to make X amount of dollars every year to like send them to private school.
Right.
Like, that's a real concrete goal. So when you have to actually like sit there and list for 2 or 3 hours,
that's your goal.
That's a motivating factor.
Right. Yeah, I think when we first started too, we had like super small goals. Like, we wanted to buy a Vitamix, or a solar oven.
Right.
And from there, it just went, okay, well, now that we made that much money, let's pay our phone bill every month. And, so those goals started becoming, bigger.
Right. Like there's one guy who says that him and his wife sell on eBay because they want to pay for a big vacation every a year. So they want to be able to spend a couple weeks in Europe. I mean, that's a great goal,
Yeah.
And that might not be something they could do if they didn't put in a couple hours a week selling online.
To do that, exactly.
So, his expectations are much different from ours.
Right.
Like, what do you think our goal is now? I mean, so at first our goal was like we didn't want to work for
we've already talked about this. Pay off debt.
Right, pay off debt.
I mean, that's like the biggest thing we're trying to do. We built up debt in order to buy houses and do things that we wanted to do, and now we have to pay that off. And hopefully it won't take 30 years to pay off, That's
like,
the goal.
To me, the very specific goal is by the time you're 40.
Right. Which is like 5 years.
We have no debt.
Right.
And we're almost like retired.
Yeah.
And I know people hate to hear that, like, you're never retired. Yeah, I mean, true. Like, we'll still be working, but like, where we will not have any more of that, it's pressure on us because we don't have any debt. And really, like, once you have no debt, it's like, life is pretty affordable.
Yeah, you can, if you're frugal and if you're a scavenger, it can be very affordable.
Yeah.
It can be, you can live cheap but live well.
I mean, we even have a good life, a very calm life now for the most part.
Yeah.
But there's still, we can still feel that it's pressure on us because there's an expectation every month.
Yeah.
We have to come up with a certain amount of money.
Exactly.
I mean, like, it's Ryan Grant of Online Selling Experiment.
Yeah.
We've talked about him.
Right.
And I love it. I mean, he's like one of my favorite blogs, even though I have no interest in doing anything he does because he puts in all of his numbers. He's talking about how he's building his business, and he's very clear about what he's trying to do. It's like he wants to build this business where it's generating tens of thousands of dollars every month, but he's actually not doing any of the work. He's hired people to do everything, and then Amazon sells everything.
Right.
I mean, that's cool. It's kind of fun to kind of watch it unfold just to see how it works,
It's amazing.
But that doesn't have to be what I want or what we want to do.
Right, but I think what's cool is you can see other people doing those things like we're talking about this equation. He has a completely different equation of stuff that he's working with and goals that he's trying to meet in a very different way. But I think it's cool to see that from people because you learn what you don't want to do. You learn what you could possibly do. You learn, what experiments you might want to try out, based on what other people are doing.
I think you also have to learn, too, what sacrifices you're willing to make, And I think people forget that that's a big part of it, or at least it's been a big part for us, it's like we said, it's not really a sacrifice, but it did feel like a sacrifice at first of choosing to live in an urban area. In a rural area.
Leaving our urban area, yeah.
And to live in, a place where a lot of our friends would think,
you live in the middle of nowhere.
There's nothing going on out there.
Right, exactly. And they're right.
but this has allowed us to build a business.
I mean, I think also when we talk to our friends in New York or, San Francisco, and we're like, yeah, we own 2 houses, and we have 3 businesses we're running. I mean, they're like, what? How is that? That's amazing. We own however many acres of land and we have our own schedule. People just, they don't even understand it. They're just I don't know how that's possible. And that's why we love to talk on the podcast about it and talk to other people about it because it's still amazing to us that it's real,
Yeah, and that's why, we've talked about in the past about doing the numbers. We've always encouraged people who are new or people who sell on eBay to do their numbers so they can keep track of how much do they have listed, how much are they selling every week, just so they can see that what they're doing is working, or
Yes.
if it's not working, they need to do something to change that.
Yeah.
But also, I guess now we're advocating to like kind of work this equation out for it yourself to have like real goals that make sense.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't trying to do some kind of life coach stuff. I just think it helps us all, especially on the blog, so everyone has a real idea of what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And so there isn't so much it's frustration about why they aren't getting what they want, you know?
Right.
And that might just be happening because their equation doesn't make sense.
Or also the other thing is doing the numbers. I hate doing the numbers. I don't even like to look at the numbers. But when I see the numbers, I'm like, it's always better than I thought.
Right.
I mean, really, I'm like, wow, we actually, like, I hate looking in the PayPal account because I'm like always afraid, oh, we're not gonna have any money. Wait, we have a lot of money. Like, you know, a couple weeks ago, I'm like, we made a lot of money this month, you know, on all our projects, you know, and so that allowed us to pay off a bunch of debt, a lot of debt.
Yep.
So it's like, you're probably doing better than you think, you know.
Although I will say I didn't have it down here, but another part of the equation is what kind of things you're actually trying to sell on eBay. Like, it's always interesting to me when I see new people come on and they're like, oh, you know, I'm not making enough is money or whatever. And then you start asking questions like, well, what do you sell? And what's your average price of what's selling? And they're like,
$5.
$8.
I know.
It's like, well,
you're like, oh, no kidding.
how are you going to make $1,000 a month at $8 a pop? I mean, you have to sell so much stuff in order for that to happen.
Yeah, I think I really like how in the comments we can really break that down with people, because once you really break it down into the details and the facts, not just like what you think, like what something's wrong, eBay's throttling me, I'm not selling anything, I'm not making money. You're like, well, what are you buying and selling? How much time are you?
Right.
You know, you break down the equation.
And so there's a girl who we started following when we started to sell on eBay. You know, like we've talked about this. Like we, stalk other.
I think stalk is a strong word. I think follow is a better word.
We follow other sellers and always have, because we learn from different people. And so we found her store and we noticed that she sold a lot of the same kind of stuff we did.
Right.
And then we learned from her one thing, and that was she sells, just like we did at first, she sells stuff for so cheap. And the thing is, so we started to change that, and we started to like charge more and more and find better inventory, and she just stayed the same, you know? And recently we started to look at her store again, and she's changed.
It was yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yesterday I actually looked at her store, and I was like, she's starting to charge the correct, like, market-based prices for these clothes.
Right.
And I was so happy. And she was using Buy It Now rather than auctioning stuff off at 99 cents for really awesome vintage clothes.
Back in the day, she would do like, it was obvious, it would be like a Monday, and she would put up like 30 auctions starting at 99 cents. And then a week later, the highest thing would be like $19. And then at least half of it sold for 99 cents. You know,
and it would kill me I had to stop looking at her store because I was like, I can't deal with it. And I'm so happy to see that she was like, $50 for this dress. I'm like, yes. Yep.
So anyway, that's kind of it's math. It's lesson that a couple art kids are trying to give, and maybe people could expand, or maybe there's parts of the equation that we didn't really think about, because again, it's whatever you're bringing to the table. It's going to put different limitations on you, or give you different set of freedoms, and that's what makes an eBay business either be really successful or not. And success depends on each of us.
Yes.
Some
people we see in the numbers make $3,000 a week,
right,
and sell 150 items a week, right. And that's, and people always laugh like, oh, you said you had a slow week and you made $1,000, like that's so crazy. I'm like, there are people who make a lot more than we do, and they put in a lot more hours, and so it's just everybody's different, and
And, and we've gotten to where we know when we're having a good week or a bad week, or when we're hitting the numbers we want or aren't. And, so we know we don't get sad over something that we think shouldn't happen. Like, I don't expect us to ever make $5,000 in a week. Like, that's just
awesome.
Not. I mean, like it's like we know our equation well enough where that just doesn't work because we don't have enough of those high dollar items. We don't sell enough inventory. That kind of thing. So, and that's good. I would love to make $5,000, but I know it's not possible. It's with
our equation.
Yeah. And then that's good. So it means that we're never sad when that doesn't happen.
Right. Like, our expectations are at the proper level.
Right.
And I think that has a lot to do with, like, understanding, how much time you can put in versus what your inventory is versus, what your goals are.
Right. Okay, so as we do every week, we're actually going to, let's talk about our numbers. Like, let's see the equation.
How is it working?
If the equation worked this week, our eBay equation.
Yep.
So in our original store, in our first store, we made about $2,300.
That's a great number.
We're doing this on Saturday night, so we still have, part of the evening left. It could get higher, We're always positive people. But, we made about $2,300. So this is more than it last week. And last week was more than the week it's before. To me, it seemed like because we were gone for those 10 days and we had changed our handling time, I feel like we're back up to what we normally expect.
And we hadn't listed in like 5 weeks.
Right.
So our stores were getting a little...
So we're always like, if we're making $200 or $300 a day, then we're happy.
Doing well.
And so we made more than $300 a day.
It's awesome.
It makes our household happy.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of stress. It's nice.
Yes.
As we know, we're going to be able to throw a lot of it's money at our debt. It's great. So we sold 49 items.
Wow. 50 items.
Which is crazy. We normally don't sell 50 items. Normally we're like 30 something.
Wow. And that's just in store number 1, right?
Yep.
Wow. I'm impressed. Yay. Good week.
So, our average price was about $47, which is...
It's a nice average price.
Always nice. We also have a second store that we started. We started on May 20th. So we are
less than a month.
It's less than a month.
Yeah.
So we made $135.
Not bad.
It's less than last week, but,
And we have about 200 items.
Right. And so... We have actually 250 items in that store now.
Oh.
And we sold 4 items.
That sounds so sad.
Yeah, right. So,
4 items.
Part of this is interesting. It's for us because we get a lot of people on the blog and they're new and they're like, I just started 2 months ago.
Right.
And I have 200 items and I'm embarrassed to share its numbers.
You should not be embarrassed ever, ever.
So this is like us being new. So we started, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We've been able to list 250 items and we made like $135 this week,
That's not bad.
Yeah.
We sold something today in that store for $80.
Yep.
So that's great.
And then, a good thing is, and a bonus is Bonanza.
Bonanza was a crazy bonus this week.
We sold like 3 or 4 things and we made $160. So.
And one of them was a combined shipping sale where someone bought 2 things worth $100.
Yeah.
I was like, did like a double take. I was like, what?
So, people have talked about it. It would not be a place that I would depend on any kind of money. It's just a total bonus.
Where you're like, all right, nice.
Yeah. And, I think another part of the interesting, it's numbers, especially now that we do not list with the template, which I know everyone makes fun of us. Yes, we had a template. Blah, blah, blah. There are reasons for it. We changed. We realized, that we could be more efficient and that the template was not as necessary. So in our store number 1, you listed 106 things.
Yeah.
And in store number 2, you listed 118 things.
Wow, so That's listed
crazy.
Over 200 items.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's fast.
That's awesome.
It's fast.
And some of the things we sold were things that had no template. And I know for people that have always not had a template, you guys are laughing at us, but, that was important for us to see, is that if we changed our system, would we keep selling items than we are. So
basically, would people still trust us as professional sellers?
Right.
But I feel like we say, if you have good title, good photos, and good detailed information, measurements, description on the condition, people are like, great, I got the info I needed.
Yep.
I'm confident in buying this.
Yep. So let's quickly talk about this second store that we started.
Yeah.
We kind of just did it. Well, I'm not going to even say why we started, but we did. So it's interesting. It is much slower than what we're accustomed to.
Yeah.
I mean, if we didn't have our original store and we only sold 4 things this week, I would be freaking out.
However, if we only had the second store, I would have listed 200 things in that store. Right. I would have doubled our inventory.
Well, I guess
so. That's a good thing,
right? I mean, I guess that's the thing, though. I mean, we easily had gone like 3 days it's without a single sale, you know, and that would drive me crazy if that's all we had. But I think what we did in the beginning too is that our frustration we would take out into just photographing and listing. Like, instead of just like sitting around wondering why aren't things selling, we would just be like, well, let's just keep working, you know? And so I think that's what we're going to see. I think I said that our original number was like, if we could get, when we got 500 things in our store, we could make $2,000 a month. So let's see if that's true. I mean, we have almost 300 items. Like, let's see.
Right.
If we get up to 500 items, can we start making $2,000 a month?
Now, something I noticed as well, and people talk about this a lot when they start selling on eBay, is that they have these limits. One of the limits is, and it's eBay that does this, is they put a limit on when you get your payment from your buyer.
Right.
They give you a 21-day limit, or if the item gets delivered and is marked delivered. There's all these different rules. And it totally sucks. You're like, oh, I did not get paid, and et cetera, et cetera. And the interesting thing that I found was when I bought a store subscription, I bought the second tier level.
Premier,
yeah.
How much is it? $50?
$50 a month.
Yep.
If you pay for a year subscription, which I did.
Right. Or it's $60.
Or it's $60 if you do month to month.
Right.
Like, basically, you don't get a year contract. But whatever, $50, and they give you 500 listings for free, no insertion fees. That limit for payments being held went away in like a week.
And so now we get our money immediately.
Right away.
Right.
I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to call.
Right.
Also, my limits for selling, because they give you 500 free listings, they can't justify only allowing you to list like 200 items.
Right.
Because that wouldn't make any sense.
And that's what we hear from a lot of people who are new. They're like, I want to list, but I only get to list 200 items. And so they're hitting their heads against a wall. So our thing is, get a subscription.
Buy a store.
Yeah.
If you're serious about this and you're like, I want to list 1,000 things. I want to list 500 things, in 2 months.
Well, then
you got to get a store subscription. Right. Like, that's it.
But this week they raise our limits again.
Yeah. So I think they saw, there must be some like algorithm, I hate to use that word, but where they're seeing that you're listing and that you're selling, and they automatically raise my limits from 570 items to almost 1,100.
Right. Or the stuff on our store could be worth, instead of 15,000, it could be worth up to 24,000.
Right. So I didn't have to call. I didn't have to do anything. It just automatically happened.
I mean, I think that we won't be able to hit a limit. I mean, unless you're unless you're a listing, like really expensive, like $10,000 items. If you're just a listing, like we are, $20 to $50 items, like,
you're gonna be fine.
I think they're gonna keep raising our limits.
Yeah.
Before we hit them.
Right. Which is great. I love that I didn't even have to think about it.
Right.
And I think also in the beginning, people had always talked about limits, and I kind of was like, I don't remember having to call. I don't remember them getting raised. Like, it just kind of happened. And I think it's because early on when they first were doing store subscription, like, whatever they had set the prices, it was kind of new or something.
It just made sense.
We were just like, let's just get it. Jay did the numbers. And so we didn't have to think about those limits. And that's why I don't remember them, because it was automatic, So
So I guess our goal with the second store is kind of like to bring some of the fun back, or the kind of its newness.
Yeah.
The like, it's almost like we're putting our backs up against a wall. Like, so we started a meet about 3 weeks ago. Like, how quickly can we start to make $2,000?
Right. Can we do it?
Yeah. Like, why don't we just see?
Like, there's no pipeline. We have to build the pipeline from scratch.
And so
we'll see.
Okay, so things we sold, it's this week. I mean, one reason why we did so well is this week. We had one day where we made $1,000.
Jay added it up at the end of the day, and he's like, we made $1,000
It's between both of our stores and
Bonanza.
That was that big day on there. But, I mean, so that happens to us a handful of times a year, but normally it's only during the holiday season. And really, it only happens because we have such a large inventory. We have enough stuff for people to buy,
like exactly,
to make $1,000.
Right.
I mean, and those days are like, wow, it's like that was exciting.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And it really is also a mix of like the bread and butter stuff, like a bunch of $30 items. But then for us, it's always got to be there's got to be some high dollar items, like,
right?
And so like some of those things were we sold these 2
Kimper or Quimper pieces.
We had talked about this where we were at. One of our open-ended scavenging days, we end up in this kind of junky thrift shop. I find like a tub of pottery.
Right.
And I asked the guy how much, and he's like...
$25.
$25 for the whole box.
And we were like,
Well, I mean, we were kind of like that.
No, I know, but...
I'd never seen this stuff before.
We didn't know if it was cheap knockoffs or some real deal thing. So
we bring it all home, and so we sold 2 pieces, one for $225 and one for $100.
So we bought I think it was actually 27 pieces for $25. So every single piece was under $1.
Right.
And we're selling, and when I first listed stuff, people kind of laughed at me because I listed stuff high, 150. Yeah. One of the pieces that sold, which was a wall pocket, it's one of these. Just look it up. Oh my God! If I even have to explain what it is, it's ridiculous. But I had it up for $299, and he offered $225, and I just
of course
laughed. I'm just like, yes, I think I'll take this offer. Like, it was awesome, And
and we listed this stuff maybe like 3 months ago.
A few months ago, 3 months ago.
So again, it's going to take us time to sell the entire box of stuff.
Yeah.
But we're already so far ahead of the game.
We made a profit on the first piece. The first piece was a little replacement lid, just a tiny little lid. It was 2 inches wide. Lids break, people lose them. I sold that for $25.
Right.
I made a profit on the first piece.
And we do get offers where someone's like, I can buy this from someone else for $60. Why are you selling it for $250? And we just counter them. Like, we rarely engage people. Like, the logic doesn't make sense. Because there are people that sell this stuff for that cheap.
On auction, mostly.
But then their stuff gets sold, and then our stuff is
still there.
It is interesting, and I wish I could figure it out. So 2 people bought items, these pieces of pottery. It's within, like, 3 hours of each other. And my only theory is like there's some pottery forum somewhere and someone links to it and then people buy. I can't imagine why.
Or they knew each other because they were both in Southern California, so I just wondered if one of them was like, check this piece out. Yep. She's got a bunch of them.
Yep.
Or it's just a complete coincidence where our stuff was showing up on the search that day.
Yep.
I always want to know, but who knows?
So something else we sold, another big item, was a wool rug. We sold
one of our wool rugs.
And we talked about this where we are at an auction a month ago, and there were 6 wool rugs. How many?
I bought 5. I bought 4 for $20.
That's right.
And one for $5.
Yeah. And where we were at the auction, and we were like, these are ours.
I was like... And I was prepared to pay $50 each.
Right. And just no one, it's one of them.
No one cared.
We sold one of them we added up for $500 and they offered $250 and we're like, sure. let's clock in
50% off.
Right, but let's clock in some profit.
And what's hilarious is the lady got it today because it was FedEx ground, so it took 5-6 days to get to her. And she was in California, so she's far away. What she said in her email was, at first I had buyer's remorse when I bought this.
I was so worried, like, she was going to be like, I need to send this
I was
back.
like, I don't even want to read the rest of this message. And then she's like, but I totally love it. Do you have any more rugs?
Right.
So I was like, oh, thank God. So we sent her a link to the rest of our rugs. I don't know if she'll buy any more, but...
But see, it's for us, now that we've sold that one...
The pressure's off.
Now we've gotten profit already, and now I'm like, I don't want to sell these as cheap anymore,
right.
So we're not going to take any more. It's 50%
half price offers.
But it was good to sell it. And then we sold another rug.
It's a smaller rug.
Smaller, like a prayer rug.
Yeah.
It's a one that like hangs on
like a wall hanging.
It's like a wall hanging.
Or a runner, like a table runner.
And it's something that we had found in Amsterdam for €1.
€1.
And, you know.
It sold for $100.
Yeah, it sold for $100. And so that's exciting. These Amsterdam things we brought home from Amsterdam are slowly...
They're slowly selling.
I bet that we've made at least $2,000 from that stuff that we've got in Amsterdam.
Which is good because that kind of helps us paying for an apartment in Amsterdam.
Right.
Which is good because if we want to go to Amsterdam again, we feel like we can source enough interesting stuff at the flea market.
But see,
to bring it home.
Anytime I scavenge, even when we're just at home and we're like, let's stop at the thrift store and we're spending like half an hour in the thrift store, I'm always like, okay, we're going to find some stuff and eventually we're going to make, a couple $100 from this and this is going to pay our phone bill for this month. I mean, that's how I have to think, it's like... There
were a couple hauls that and one of them was that Kimper haul.
An HAUL, a haul. Okay.
Haul, yeah. There are a few hauls that we've done at certain thrift stores where after a couple months of selling the pieces that we bought there, like going to a thrift store that has never been shopped before by professionals, and you bring home a carload and you kind of add it up in your head and you're like, we spent $100 there. We've made $5,000 off of all that stuff. And you're kind of like, I'm glad we stopped there, that random day.
Okay, so we sound like these big shots.
I'm not trying to...
Here's where we're going to eat some crow. We sold an old purse for $9.99. And this purse, we listed it in October 2009.
That's 5 years ago.
Almost 5 years.
Almost 5 years. 4.5 years. Now, and actually, just a real quick note. The reason I knew when we listed it is it didn't tell me on eBay when I listed it, actually, because we had ended our store at one point a couple years ago and relisted everything as an experiment. I save all my emails. So I put the title in my email, the exact title, and the day it listed, because eBay sends you an email, your item is listed, was October of 2009. That's how that's why I keep all my emails.
So it's been up for 5 years. Why don't we say a bit less? So let's say, but why don't we say it is a total of 5 years? So, and then that's 60 months. But if you think about it, we're paying 5 cents a month to keep things listed. So really, it costs us $6 to keep that thing up for that long. We made $10. Even when you take off eBay fees, I think
still made money.
We still made probably $1 on it. So
we made $1.
Now, I do want to say, I mean, while we're here, I did some its numbers here. I wish that eBay would help me do a graph of this much easier. It shouldn't be this hard, but I went and looked at our numbers just to see how old items are. And people are always asking about us, and we're always arguing with people because people are like, why don't you just sell your whole store?
Yeah.
So we have 3,800 items in our store. So 1,800 of those items are under a year old.
Under a year. Yeah. Okay. So less than a year.
So 2,000 of those items are between 1 and 2 years old. Wow. And then about 50 of those items are from 2012, so are about 3 years old.
So 2,000 items.
So so half of our store is older than 12 months. But if you think about it, since we started in 2009, with the same, with it listed and forget it. I mean, it tells me everything sells. So everything we started to list, like at the end of 2008, 2009 to 2012, I mean, that's 3 years of stuff. We've sold basically all of that stuff. I mean, this purse was like one of those. The reason why we laugh about it is that we just didn't want to let it go. And it finally sold.
I truly listed it and forgot it.
Right, exactly. And if you think about it, the stuff we were listing, in 2009, 2010, even 2011, it was much junkier stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff that I don't think would be as popular, and it still sold.
Yep.
So I guess some people say, well, half your stores, but between 1 and 2 years old, that's horrible. Like, that's a horrible sell-through rate, and, that's blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, that's incredible to me because it means that everything else before that is gone.
Yep.
It is sold. We haven't had to fire sale it. We haven't had to do anything.
It's sold at full price.
We just had to be patient. You know?
Exactly.
And it's funny, that purse is a good example. Like, $9.99 was like our mantra. Mm-hmm. Everything, $9.99,
$12.99,
or $12.99 were our expensive items. So
those are interesting numbers.
Yeah.
And like we always say, it's the pipeline.
Yeah.
You're filling the pipeline. Stuff sells every day.
And that equation, because we have no storage problem, that equation works for us.
Yeah.
So some other things we sold were shoes.
Yes.
And that's only important because I have been taking photos of shoes, and you've been listing shoes, and those shoes were starting to sell right away. So we sold like 3 pairs of shoes.
Yeah.
And if someone is just starting out, I would always suggest to people to start selling shoes. That's what we did. Shoes are such a great thing to take pictures of. And
everybody needs shoes. Everybody gives shoes away.
Right.
They're easy to find. They're easy to store.
They're easy to ship.
Easy to ship. Most of them should have sizes on them.
Right.
It's great.
Right.
I mean, the great thing is there's a lot of competition for shoes on eBay, but the cool thing is you can find stuff that nobody else can find.
And everybody has feet.
Everybody has feet. Everybody has shoes that they wear out. They need new shoes for the gym.
Yeah.
They need new shoes for work. They're going to a wedding.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Shoes are still fun. But
shoes are fun. I love shoes. So here's something that I sold this week that got returned last week. That Mexican peso belt got returned. The lady said we measured it wrong. She was correct. I gave her all her money back. She even mailed back a piece that had fallen off that I was able to repair because it was just a clip-on piece. So she was really nice about it. 2 days later, it sold again to someone also in Los Angeles. They were both in Los Angeles. Different person.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a good example of why we don't mind taking its returns for any reason. I mean, even if we didn't do something wrong, we would have still accepted it. And you know what? Everything sells again.
Everything sells again. So it's really... It might take 2 years, as we said. I'm just kidding.
Well, it could.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
So let's talk about customer issues. So I think I had talked about how a woman had returned some fabric, and she said it wasn't wool. Clearly it wasn't, because she said she
was right.
She was right. It's not wool. Okay, fine. That's fine. However, what she did was she washed it, and she gave me a note that even said this. She washed it in boiling hot water, and then she washed it in ice cold water, and it didn't shrink. Fine. The fabric looked like it was ruined after this. Right. The edges were frayed. It was all messed up.
And just because it needs to be on the edge record, I was willing to just eat. I was like, we made a mistake. Just throw the thing away. But
I was being a real stickler about this.
Yeah.
So I called eBay. The customer service opened a case, and then this is kind of an issue. They opened a case, and then they closed the case in the buyer's favor.
They decided against us,
gave her money back, but then told me it would be appealed in my favor. A week goes by, I don't see anything about it being appealed. I have a defect now for a case going in the buyer's favor, et cetera, et cetera. So I called again, and I explained it to the customer service rep, and she was totally understanding. and was like, okay, I'm going to get this taken care of for you right now. She appealed the case. The case closed in my favor. The defect was removed in a couple days. But the even cooler thing, which I was not expecting, they fully refunded me.
Wow.
They PayPal'd me the full amount within like 2 hours. Wow. So I just had to say the squeaky wheel gets the grease because I was really persistent about this.
And plus that you got a rep that seemed really friendly, and I think you got 3 other defects taken off at the same time. Right?
Yeah, so this was actually a different rep who was also very friendly, and she removed 3 defects. Yeah. I went through all 3 of them. 2 of them, they were supposed to be removed anyway the week before. I think there's a discrepancy between when they say they're going to remove them and when they actually do it.
I can imagine, like, there's some people listening to this, and they're kind of new to eBay, and they're just like, I did not get involved in this to be on the phone with customer reps. But unfortunately, that's
what it's come down to.
That's what it's come down to if you want to keep a record.
So the second issue, which is similar, was this guy returned a hat, and he used hassle-free. And the reason he gave for hassle-free, which I've never had anyone use this reason, is they got a better price somewhere else. Okay, fine. That means he has to pay for shipping and the restocking fee. Great for me. So when I went in to refund him, eBay kept giving me an error. And on the page, it said, just go to PayPal and issue it to him directly. Like, send payment, not like through his whatever. Because apparently if someone uses a gift card or eBay bucks, you can't do a partial refund. So I called eBay and they said, yeah, just send him a direct payment with like send money to this person. So I did that. But then you can't close the return case, and it keeps asking you, have you refunded them? So I actually sat on the phone with them for like 45 minutes, getting transferred 3 times. But the cool thing was the customer service rep that closed it for me and fixed it for me was the one who then removed 3 defects. Right. So I was like, while we're on the phone, let me tell you about all these other ones. So that was good. But you know what? I'm very persistent about that stuff because I want our defects as low as possible. Next month, there are like 3 defects that are just going to fall off by themselves, which is awesome.
Yep. One thing we sold was a bowling ball. Everyone, I'm sure we all see these bowling balls in like thrift stores. Yeah. I saw a cool bowling bag.
Yeah.
It's like a double ball bag, and it was just cool, and we love to buy and sell bags because bags like shoes are very
they sell like crazy.
Practical, and people pay a lot of money. This bag happened to have 2 bowling balls in it that I didn't want, but they just came with the bag.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, let's try and sell them.
Yeah.
And so we sold one of the balls. Unfortunately, I called it a urethane when it's really polyester, so we had to give the guy back half his money.
The cool thing was he only asked for half of the purchase price.
Right.
Not because shipping was expensive, because this thing weighed like 15 pounds.
So it was good. I mean, he was nice enough, but that's just where we're like, yeah, sure, take half your money.
Because that means
just be.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. This is led us to there's like a big market for used bowling balls. I mean, there's like some sites where it looks like this guy just buys old bowling balls and resells them, and he knows all about the bowling balls, so he can properly.
He knows what they're made out of.
It just goes to show that you can get into anything if you're into it,
And most thrift stores and flea markets, people see bowling balls as absolute garbage. Right. They're just like, this thing's taking up so much space. It's heavy.
Get it out of here.
Just take it away.
Because actually, guys can get the finger holes filled and then re-drilled.
Guys. Or girls.
Or gals. Bowling gals.
Yes. Yes, you can get the holes refilled and re-drilled.
Right.
So.
But there's not a whole lot of money. It's like, regular ones are like $40 or something.
But if you find a really rare one that's vintage and has a cool pattern, they can sell for over $100.
It's just like another thing.
Anything else. So.
And this is always interesting.
Yes.
This happens to us a couple times a year, 3 or 4 times, where we'll get a person who messages us through eBay and says, I have something that you have, it's for sale. And normally it's something very expensive. Like, we have some fabric up now.
Designer fabric.
It's up for like $1,000 or something. And someone wrote us and says, I have some of this. Can I sell it to you for almost what we're selling it for on eBay?
Like, no.
And normally we kind of, just ignore these
A lot of
people,
times
right?
we don't write back.
But I happened to engage this guy, and I was like, why don't you sell it for $1,000 on eBay? And he's like, oh, I just want to get rid of it. And I was like, I'll buy him I'll buy him for $1. That's, that's how this works.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, but I need to have...
Oh, and then he's like, no, but I'll give it to you for $750.
Right.
We were like, conversation's over.
It's just like amateur hour.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Like people not understanding how any of this works.
Yeah. Those are always hilarious to me.
Yeah.
You were funny. I was surprised you wrote back to him, because usually we're just like, like, I don't want to have to explain it to people that you're on the site called eBay where people sell stuff.
Right.
You have something, you should sell it.
Why don't you
Take a picture with your phone.
Right.
You took a picture to send to me. Like, it just... Yeah, it's really... People are funny. Okay, what do we do this week, Jay? Remind me. No, I know what we did.
So, since we came back from our last trip, it has been full-time eBay. And so this was another good example this past week where we basically just focused on
doing eBay. Listing, photographing.
I mean, this was like a typical example of what, doing eBay full-time is like. It's for us. It's like waking up, shipping things in the morning.
Yeah, I ship stuff in the morning. The good thing is it's been kind of hot and humid here, so our office has a nice air conditioning unit.
Yeah.
So that helps work.
Yeah, we don't have AC in our actual house, so
right.
It helps kind of keep us focused in our office.
Right.
It's like...
it's nice and cool over there.
Down south here.
Yeah.
So I, as I talked about it last week, was determined to photograph all those shoes.
We had a lot of shoes, yeah.
So I finished all of them. It took me about 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
I took pictures of, I don't know, between 200 and 300 pairs of shoes that had been kind of building up.
Wow.
And even if they sell for only $40 each, which many of them will sell for more than that.
Right.
I mean, I put $8,000 into our pipeline.
Right.
I mean, you still have to...
I have to list them. I have been listing them, yeah.
But, that's kind of what it's like.
Right.
You just focus on one kind of big thing, a big pile.
and get it in the pipeline.
Get that stuff in the pipeline. So we'll be selling these shoes over the next, 12 months or so.
Exactly. And I feel like spring and summer is a great time to list shoes because people are looking for sandals or formal shoes for weddings and,
And like we said, we already sold 3 pairs of shoes, the very next day after.
Exactly.
A listing.
So that's great.
And so you listed, I think, about 200
items.
Actually, 224 items.
Wow. Cool. And not all of those were shoes, obviously. Some of them were shoes. But
So now you're doing kind of a balance between listing between our main store and our second store.
Yep.
How are you balancing that? Just on a whim? Yeah,
it's kind of like half and half. I mean, if you look at the numbers, I listed like 110 in one and 110 in the other. And I mean, we sell the same stuff in both stores, essentially. I mean, hats and shoes and housewares. I mean, those are in both of our stores. But I try to keep the higher end items with more photos in our main store. Like, I was listing some high priced items that had like 20 photos. So I kept that in the main store and actually used the template for some of those. And then, hats and, miscellaneous housewares and just miscellaneous random stuff I put in the second store.
So, like, there were some shoes that I had taken pictures of that we realized they were worth like $400 or $500.
Yeah, that one in our main store. Yeah. Basically because for items like that, like one pair is a pair of Dolce & Gabbana flats, and I have them up for $500. I saw someone else sell the exact same shoes for $450 recently. So I'm make an offer. I don't think I'll get $500 for them. But I want the reputation of our other store with the large feedback, for a item like that.
Right. And it's interesting about this second store is that we, it's unclear. We started it because we felt like we were hitting like a ceiling. A plateau.
Yeah.
And, I do not want to get into conspiracy theories about like eBay's like somehow...
If you have over 2,000 items, they'll throttle you.
But I will just say this. instead of getting into, these hypothetical things, we're just doing a test.
Yeah.
So what is it going to be like as we do this a second store? Can we have 2 large stores? I mean, why not? Instead of like one having like 6,000 items, how about 2 that had 3,000 items?
Yeah, exactly. So we're just seeing, can you make twice as much or what? I don't know.
Yeah, and what does that prove? Does that prove eBay's like destroying us? And I mean, I don't know. It ultimately it doesn't matter. What matters is what works.
Yeah.
So if this works, then that's cool, and I don't really care about the underpinnings of why it's happening.
But it's fun because it's an experiment, and we'll just see how it goes. Yep. I'm just seeing if I can get top-rated seller on the other one.
It's fun because I think we become a little bit too precious about our main store and kind of afraid to try its new things because we're afraid of maybe we're going to break something or at least I feel that way.
Yeah.
So it's fun having the second store because we don't really care. Like, we just try. It's whatever we want as far as like template and I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything we want to try out, we can try out in the second store because, I personally get fearful about trying too many new things in our main store because that's our sole. I mean, not our sole source of income, but our main source of income.
Yeah. Well, and what's cool is we were experimenting with the new store doing no template, and then we were like, this is so great, let's do it in the main store. Right. So you can have that kind of experimental, like, try stuff out. Is it working? Yep, it is working. Let's do it in the other store now. It's fine.
It's our skunk works, right?
Skunk. Yeah, I had to Google that. I certainly had to Google that.
Okay, so this is a very important topic.
Coffee.
It's Michael, this guy Michael.
Yep.
Mike. Him and I have been emailing back and forth for a while now. And God, correct me if I'm wrong. I might get it confused here. So he travels a lot. It's with his kids because his kids play sports, and I guess they do tournaments and stuff like that.
Right.
So he's like scavenging as he's doing this. Anyway, he sent us some coffee because he knows I like coffee.
And it was delicious. Yep. I will say it was really nice coffee.
And then he sent me a link. I'd heard about it, but he suggested, why don't you try cold brew coffee?
Right.
And then I just Googled it. I mean, just anyone
I've heard about it. It's like a big trend right now.
Anyone can Google it. It's just a way to make coffee in your refrigerator.
Right.
It's not iced coffee, which is like actual hot coffee that then is old and then you just put in the fridge and make it. It's a cold brew.
It's like making tea almost, but with coffee.
And you know what? We're sold. It's great because it's been hot here. We don't have AC, so I could get these big,
like
things.
big mason jar.
Yeah, and I've got 2 going at once, so there's always one to drink out of, and it's delicious.
Now the thing about it that I noticed was, I've done some stuff, like we make iced tea in the fridge and whatever, and I'm just like, well, what's the big deal about this cold brew? Like, people in Brooklyn are like, I must only have cold brew coffee now. I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? But when you actually taste it, if you have like pretty decent coffee beans,
I'm drinking some right now.
It's so good because it's like, I feel like the flavor is more complex than hot coffee. Like it's a little more.
We sound like addicts. Basically because it doesn't use a heat. It just doesn't taste as acidic and bitter.
It's very mellow and it's very nutty. Yeah. Like, to me, it tastes like raw chocolate. Which is a great thing to be drinking all day if you love chocolate. Yeah.
So anyway, that was a big thing for us this week. So if you're interested, just Google cold brew coffee.
Is so good.
There's a million ways to make it and videos, and I don't need to tell you how to do it.
But it actually helps productivity because you're caffeinated all day. Yeah. Like, Jay's always caffeinated all day, but there's a point in my day where I'm like, I don't want to drink hot coffee anymore. And I don't want to make iced coffee because it's going to take too long, blah, blah, blah. So I've been really enjoying. I'm like, Jay, is there more coffee? Is it cold? You're like, oh my God, calm down. So let's talk about the rental property.
So one reason why we've been able to spend so much time on the eBay store this week is because our rental property has been very slow.
Yeah,
This is the second week in a row where we've only had Friday and Saturday night booked.
Yeah.
All week long, no bookings. we tried our best to put it on Craigslist. We
lowered the
price, and we talked about it last week because we didn't know this because we don't have kids. School has still been
in session.
It just ended Friday.
Yeah.
Here, I don't know how in other parts of the country.
Well, we're in the eastern seaboard, so there was a lot of snow this year.
Yeah.
Tons of snow, lots of snow days. So, us not having kids, we're like, why isn't school out yet? When people are like, all the snow days, you guys. We're like, oh, yeah.
So we only had 2 nights it's rented, which, made us $450, which is very happy with. But, those nights are gone, and so that its money was imaginary and now no longer exists.
And so this week is the same. It's only
and this is the third
weekend.
week where it's the same. This week we have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday booked,
that's nice,
which is nice. But during the week is not. So I don't know. I think this is just... just like eBay, you can't... I feel like at some point we're a little helpless. We can't force...
Right.
And so what we've been doing, we talked about, is that we're now like, as I call it, stalking, but Ryan will say we're following other rentals that we feel are similar to us in our area, just watching their schedules just to see... Some of them are more booked, and we're like, I wonder why. I mean, maybe because they've been around a longer...
They have return customers.
So they have a history. It's...
Now, people have written to us and been like, how come you don't list your place on other websites? We do, actually. Yeah. We list on HomeAway, which is also VRBO. We do have a listing there. And we have a listing on FlipKey as well.
And don't we have it on some other ones? They're just kind of random sites that we threw up.
There are other, European sites that are, European-centric for, people in the UK and Europe to... vacation here, but I haven't really put that much time into
actually
those.
HomeAway, which we have not talked about, is just another website like Airbnb. It's actually was one of the original vacation rentals, so it feels a little more fuddy-duddy, but it's actually been great. We've actually had a lot of people it's booked through there.
Right, exactly.
And those people seem to book for longer times.
Yeah.
So it's been good for us.
4 to 7 nights.
Right.
Which is great. That's so helpful.
But like eBay, it feels like, there's all these sites that want you to put your thing up there. But a lot of them are just duds. It's like Bonanza, where it doesn't really do anything.
FlipKey is run by TripAdvisor. So they're kind of linked in with TripAdvisor, which is great because TripAdvisor is a widely used site for reviews. Right. But we've not gotten a single booking from FlipKey.
We get lots of people asking.
Inquiries,
and then we'll, try to communicate, and then,
nothing happens.
Nothing happens,
but
so...
it's up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. News.
So news, I just first, I was going to say I was wrong is last week. I do this thing where I talk about certain comments, and I get confused about who's who, and so I talked about, it's Newberg Picker.
Yes.
Who, I said that he worked in the financial industry.
Right.
He was the one that sent those links of the young couple that were traveling around in a conversion van.
Yeah, the Canadian couple, yeah.
Which is cool. I, for some reason, thought that he worked in the financial industry because he had left a comment, but I was probably confused. He actually lives in the Northwest, and he does, web stuff for healthcare.
When his name was Newberg Picker, I totally thought of Newburgh, New York. So I totally put those together. So clearly that's not... I think sometimes we get confused because people don't have... pictures on the blog, little icon pictures, and I just I
also I never know what people want me to say about who, about what, because I respect people's is wanting to be anonymous.
Yeah, so, exactly. Okay, so something happened this week where someone bought something through the global shipping program. They bought 2 items from me through global shipping. And it was combined automatically. I didn't have to do anything. I just looked at the order. There was a shirt in a little waste bag, and it was combined shipping to the Kentucky warehouse. It was to Australia. I don't know if that makes a difference because they don't have to do an import tax in Australia. I have no idea, but I'm just wondering if anyone else had that experience.
That's the first time it's ever happened to us.
Because mostly if people are in global shipping program countries, they're like, I really want to combine shipping, but the shipping is so insane. I don't know what to do, so I have to like make a special listing.
Right. So what we hope is that eBay has been listening to everybody talk about this, and that they've actually made a cart where international people can just put stuff in a cart and then say buy, and then it combines it or just something. And I've noticed too on the eBay website that they've kind of like updated it some. Like there are those on the upper right hand side. There's a like alarm bell that will have like a number on it or something, and if you click it, it gives
it's like an alert.
Alerts. It's before it was just like this constant string of individual alerts. Now they've like combined them. So it's
I
like
never noticed that.
Instead of I ship 8 things and it's 8 individual alerts, it will group it up. You know.
It's really funny that you say that. I've never looked at that.
Oh, really?
I think because I have everything bookmarked, like everything that needs to be shipped, I have a bookmark, so I don't even like look at the front page. But that's interesting.
I always look at that stuff.
So they're cleaning up some stuff, which is nice.
It looks like it, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So who knows?
So I saw this article this week on Associated Press, AP, that a lot of airlines are shrinking the size of carry-on bags that you can bring on to. They're only shrinking it by like half an inch, but that does affect people who travel a lot. So that means that people are going to need new carry-on bags. And if people sell luggage on eBay, it's smart to put at least the biggest measurement, like the 21 inches, in the title, because people look for that stuff. So that's just a little... Whenever I see news about baggage and luggage through airlines, I'm always like perking up because we sell so much luggage.
Yeah.
So I'll link to that on the blog as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting article because, you know, now so many airlines make you pay to check in bags. There are many of us, like us, where we never check in bags. Right. We put everything into our
carry-on.
Right.
We travel very light, as light as possible.
So I think airlines are trying to crack down on that so, you know, people can't, like, because, and I do see that, and I understand is what they're doing. People, like, bring really big bags, bigger than probably they should, and the airlines aren't, you know, and making people check.
Yeah, do the check.
So they're probably trying to crack down on that. And again, all these links we're talking about here will be on the blog at scavengerlife.com. So Zach, he has this a video that he emailed to me of a woman.
Yes.
Who clearly has like a real problem. You know, it's not
a hoarding problem.
It's not funny. It's interesting, I guess, just like those hoarding shows that you see. You know, I think all of us are just like, that's crazy. How is that happening? You know, and it's just this woman that's walking around her house, and she says she's trying to sell on eBay,
right?
And she's buying all this stuff for eBay, but her house looks like a hoarder house.
Yeah.
And she's walking around. I guess she has some kind of self-awareness. She's aware that it's a problem, and she's like basically asking for help.
Yeah.
And she's just walking around showing all the stuff she bought and how it all has just kind of like, you know, overtaken her life.
Yeah, her house is completely overtaken.
And it's funny, like she's asking people in the text for
donations.
Send her it's money. She's like, send me money.
It's kind of weird.
So
she actually puts her complete address and phone number in the YouTube comment.
Because her thing is, she's like, if I could have enough money to open up an actual physical brick and mortar store,
then all this stuff would go.
All the stuff would go in there, and people could come and buy this stuff. But it just looks like she's one of those people, and I've seen them at auctions.
Yep.
Where,
oh my god,
you know, there's like box lots of stuff that no one wants because it is really junk. And there are always people that will take them.
Yeah.
Sometimes the auctioneer says it's free,
just take it away.
All this whole table for $1, and there's always someone that will take it.
I will admit, I bought a whole table for $1 before, but it had something in it I really wanted.
And then normally though, we then drop it off at whatever.
We leave the rest at a
store,
donation.
So anyway, that was interesting.
Yeah.
And then I found a video on it's New York Times. It was interesting. It's just like a story, and it shows this guy who has invested, he says, $1 million into old computers.
Vintage computers.
Yes. And it's just interesting for those of us who are scavenging out there. This is a good example of someone that buys this kind of stuff on eBay.
A real person that does
There was even a very short scene, like a 3-second scene, where he has like a pack of boxes that he's opening.
From eBay.
And they're clearly eBay boxes, and he's buying, and it's like computer manuals and like a mouse, and so he's buying this stuff, and then it shows his room where he has all this stuff, and then the point of the story is that unlike it's woman who's a hoarder, he actually built or is building like a
museum or something?
Where you can like walk around and he shows you the history of hardware.
I love that.
And it's super cool.
There's actually a vintage computer museum in Silicon Valley outside of San Francisco that we visited a few times when we lived out there. So it's a similar thing. But I love that because it's such an important part of like humanity is computers right now, in the last, 100 years. So I think that's very cool.
Yeah. So I think that was a really good example of what the kind of person that buys that weird stuff on eBay.
Yeah.
It looks like,
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember, like, even if you are like, who would buy this? I don't know. There's somebody out there, definitely. So things that we learned in the comments this week.
Yep. So last week we set off a firestorm. Someone called and said he was at the post office.
Right.
And the person at the post office said, if you have a fragile sticker on your box, they're going to start charging you $10. And we were like,
how's that possible?
That's crazy. Someone's lying to you, blah, blah, blah. And so when we posted the podcast and everyone started commenting, and it's half right.
Yeah, so part of it is this. It is going to be an added service, much like insurance, much like signature confirmation, where it's special handling. So you can pay $10.35 extra. They give you a special sticker that says fragile special handling. It's a bright yellow and blue sticker that you'll pay for, rather than putting a little fragile sticker on that you made at home. Right. That they're not going to have any special handling. So
yeah, I mean, it's unclear. I can't imagine that they would stop us from putting our own fragile sticker.
No, that's not the case.
That didn't look like their fragile sticker.
Their fragile sticker is very distinct. So it's almost like if you pay for signature confirmation, they put a sticker that says signature confirmation on the box.
So we're going to people send us links where it's actually documented, which we always love. If someone's going to make a statement that might change the way we do things, we always love to see a link so people can actually read the documentation. Yeah. So we will link to it. And I think that's just an example of just postal employees not being fully educated on their own updates,
That, or them not explaining it properly. It's an extra service. It's not like if you write fragile on a box, well, you're charged $10 extra. That's not how, that would be that would be insane.
And, and so I just want to make clear, we don't ever mean to be harsh when people, write questions or leave comments,
Yeah.
We just want to always make sure we're talking about things based in fact. Because the eBay community especially seems very, very open to it's a rumor, and some people really kind of feed off of that, and then one person can say it's one thing, and then it just becomes fact when there's actually no concreteness to it.
It's it's very helpful to get documentation to back up that stuff so we can break down the reality of it.
Right. And,
which is exactly what we did when people started sending us links.
Right. And that's why we don't really hang out in the eBay forums, is because it's just such a huge waste of time. People are arguing fact that has no basis in reality.
Right.
And it would be so easy to clear up 99% of any of that stuff, because if someone says this is true, it should then be, and here's why it's true, here's a link.
Right. Here's the source.
Yeah.
It's like journalism.
Yeah.
Okay. So something I noticed in the comments was it seems like several people, and this happens frequently, get very caught up in having make offer on their listings. Like, they get really emotional about low offers. And I felt like this was happening a lot lately, where people were like, someone offered me $5 for something that was $50. I just can't believe it. And for me, it's just, I totally feel that way sometimes when I see an offer where I'm like, come on. But here's the deal. All you have to do is either decline it or counter it. That's it. That's all you have to do. You have to be a robot. And don't put make an offer on low priced items.
Yeah. I think that's a big one, is that people get really offended if you have like a $20 item with make offer and someone's like, I'll give you 99 cents. I mean,
yeah, you're like,
because you're putting make offer on something so low, there's no room to it's maneuver. So we only put make offer for the most part on things over $50.
Over $50. $50 and up.
So that way we'll always, go down, 10, 15, 20% easy.
Yeah.
And then like we always say, on slow days we might even do half price.
I mean, yeah, it's true. So I encourage people to not get emotional about make offer. Just counter or decline. I mean,
plus too, if you're really, not able to control your outrage, you can do auto decline.
Yeah.
When you list the item in the advanced listing tool, there's a section where you can actually put a price where if someone does under that, eBay will just automatically
declines it. You don't even see it. You don't even see the offer come in. It just If you're like, okay, I have an item that's $50, I will not take lower than 38.
Yeah, right.
Nothing lower than that. You don't even see that it happened. Yeah. So that is an option.
We also, in the comments, we have these like endless, and I guess this argument was why we kind of talked about the topic about the eBay equation.
Yeah.
It's this argument over how to sell things on eBay.
That's always the
argument. We are not here to advocate the way.
Right.
We're just saying what works for us. That is, list it and forget it.
Right.
And it's versus the people who are into the churn and burn. And there seems to be these, very strong advocates for this idea of like, get stuff up there. If it doesn't sell in a week, slash the price. If it doesn't sell by the second week, slash it again.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't hold anything longer than a month.
Like, get it gone.
And that if you have anything in your store for more than a month, it's just wasted energy. It's wasted money and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So that's fine.
Yeah. That works for some people.
And that's because of that equation. When you get into the people who are into the churn and burn, you start realizing their equation is different from like us, where they don't have storage.
Right.
They're like, I'm working in a closet, so I can't hold it. Okay.
They don't want storage.
Then churn and burn makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess with my thing about the equation is that each of us has the ability to change the equation.
Right.
So if you live somewhere and you can only sell out of a closet, it might be difficult, but you can get more storage.
Right.
You can move somewhere else.
Right.
You can move to a different city. You can move to a rural area. You can do all kinds of things.
Right.
So it's your choice to have small amount of storage.
Exactly.
And that's okay.
Especially if you're wanting to be a full-time eBayer. Like, you have to make the choice as to, like, what makes sense for your life. And for us, we were like, we are becoming full-time eBayers, so let's stay in a place that's affordable and cheap, and let's move to a house in that area that has a super amount of storage and office space. And that's what we wanted to do.
I think there's a difference because these conversations can often be where like we're all coming from a different place and we're kind of talking past each other. I think there's a difference between those of us that sell like a vintage stuff versus people that sell like it's new stuff.
Interesting.
And if you're selling a new kind of items, that there are still current like Chinese factories just spitting out this stuff, and you just have one of these things that you found.
Right.
There is always going to be it's pressure to sell that thing cheap and fast.
Yeah.
Because there's so much of it still coming out.
Right. Competition.
That's why, like, the Amazon people, they don't want to hold on to that stuff because there's just, like, more stuff of the same thing coming behind you.
Yeah.
Those of us that are doing a vintage stuff, I do understand that there are trends and like, Pyrex might be very popular now, but maybe in a year it won't.
Right.
But this is stuff that isn't being made anymore.
Yeah.
And for us, the buy and hold makes sense instead of like trying to follow trends and stuff like that.
Right.
It's always going to be an item that is in a limited amount.
Right.
So if you just keep it up there, eventually someone's going to come and buy it.
Yeah.
For the price we want. I mean, that happened to us recently. Just today and yesterday, we've been selling these military bags that we've had for a year.
Yeah.
With like no one's been touching them, and then suddenly we just sold two
of them in a row. I don't know why, and they were $50 each.
Yep.
So we made $100 on just these bags we paid $1 for.
And I didn't have to slash the price to
exactly
sell that. So anyway, in the comments, I love a vigorous debate.
Yes.
As long as we're willing to listen to each other and to be able to hold two opposing views in our head at the same time.
Yeah.
Like the way you sell is just as reasonable as the way I sell.
Right.
As long as we're both making them a money, it's we want, because we both have these different equations, and these different expectations.
Yeah, and it's just different for everybody.
Yep, and and just like when we interviewed a Mr. Customer Service, it's probably been over 12 months now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he sells totally opposite of us.
Right.
Where he's like doing everything on auction. He gets everything out of his house in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
And he makes probably about the same amount as we do. I would never want to sell like him.
Yeah.
But his way totally works for him.
Right. And we did learn a lot from him, actually. Yep. So that was a cool interview.
Yeah, because we're always, and that's why I'm always asking people very detailed questions about when they come and make these statements, is because what I'm trying to do is to learn from people.
Right.
Like, that is interesting. Why does that make sense? And like, is that something I can add to our equation?
Exactly.
All right. So what is our coming week going to be like, Ryan?
Let's see. More listing.
It's going to be another full eBay week.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. More listing. You have to take photos of art.
Yeah, we're still chipping away at all that art that we brought back from LA.
Yeah.
Every month we take a box and we take pictures of it, and so we're chipping away at that. But also now my thing is, after I've done all of those shoes, we have 22 plastic bins
on our front porch
of like just little doodads,
just random. It's like going shopping again when you open those bins.
And these are the ones I've talked about. It's before. We'll go to a flea market, yard sale, auction. We'll bring home a carload of stuff. We'll put it on the floor. We'll go through it. We'll cull out the stuff that we're really excited about.
Yeah.
I think we can make a lot of money from.
Right.
And then this other stuff that's not so exciting, we put in these bins. And so this is like 3 years of doing that. So this summertime I'm going to start knocking out these bins,
because I don't want to look at those bins anymore.
But you know what, like it's Ryan said, it's just like shopping all over again. When I go in there, I'm thinking, okay, we just put the junky stuff. There's some really cool stuff in there.
It's not junky. It's just stuff that we're like, okay, just put it away for now. It's taking up too much room.
This is like the bread and butter stuff.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, let's take voicemail questions.
And every week you can either email us its questions from our blog, or you can also call us.
And the phone number is 540-407-8486, and you have 3 minutes to leave a voicemail, either a question or a comment.
Or, you can talk about something that people talked about it last week too, to expand the knowledge.
Hi, Jay. Hi, Ryan. This is Armando Sueños with this quick question. I found a ended action where only one buyer was bidding from $20 to $80, and when the action was ready to close, another buyer won the action for $82. Do you think, guys, that this could be a kind of a seller's strategy to inflate his own actions using a second eBay account? I don't know. So thank you so much for your time and your effort. Once again, Armando Sueños. Have a good day. Bye.
So this is a good question.
Right.
Although it would be problematic. So, there is a law on eBay where eBay does not allow sellers to artificially bid up items. And if they catch you doing it, you'll get in big trouble.
Like, you can't bid on your own item, but if you had another account, that's how they would do it. Or a friend do it or something.
But, it's just like when you go to a real auction in person, it's illegal. Actually, there's like state laws where a group of bidders can't conspire to underbid. So where like people are like, no one else bid except for one person, So you aren't supposed to, take advantage and make auctions.
Manipulate the system, basically.
But my thing is, though, I feel like it would just bite people in the butt.
Yeah, because if you or your friend wins the auction, then the people willing to buy it, obviously you're not going to make your friend pay for it. So.
I'm sure everyone has stories, though, of, that happening, of someone trying to bid up an item. Because, people will place a bid, but they'll do a proxy bid, so can't you imagine someone coming along and just like bidding up just a little bit to try and keep kicking it up?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, so that does happen, I'm sure, but there's really no control over that,
Yeah. And I guess if I felt like there was a seller who was doing stuff like that, I just wouldn't buy from that person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, Jay and Ryan, this is Tony K. My eBay name is Zipcheese. I've commented a few times on the blog, but mostly I have a comment. I just heard you talking about your rental. I have a guy here at work that works with me that has 2 rentals, and he puts them on Airbnb, and he also puts them on a site called Home Away, and he said he actually likes that site better. So you might want to look into that. He does both sites, so there is some way to do it, and he likes it better. So look it up. Maybe that'll work for you. You can put it on both sites. And that's it. Have a good day. Bye.
Yes, so I guess we talked about this earlier. We also have ours on HomeAway/VRBO, and it's been successful.
Yeah, and it's just like anything. We're willing to try any kind of site that might work. It just seems like like Airbnb and VRBO seem to be the 2 kind of heavyweights right now in the rental industry. Just like with, the scavenging world, it seems like eBay and Amazon are kind of like the 2 big sites right now, and everybody else is a lot smaller and is not as helpful.
Not as voluminous.
Yeah.
Voluminous. How do you say it?
Hi, Jay and Ryan. This is Latasha from Maryland. I'm not sure if you addressed this before, but do you know if there's a time frame to dispute defects? I had one back in February, and I can't find the item anymore in my sold listings, but I do see it on my invoice. I'm able to pull up. I know what it's about, but I don't see the item. So do you know if there's a time frame that eBay will allow you to dispute a defect? Thank you.
So first of all, it's welcome to our Maryland neighbor.
Yes, you're very close.
We welcome you. We love Maryland.
Yes, there is a time limit to dispute defects, and I think it depends on how far back they... no, you know what? It's 90 days. Because after 90 days, stuff is getting dropped off of eBay. If you look for your item number, it could be gone by now off of eBay's system. So they're like, no, we don't have any proof of anything. So you really need to be looking at your seller dashboard every week. That's what we do. I look at it every week, if not every day.
Plus, it's good to at least call it once a week to deal with its defects so they don't build up either.
Right.
Because if we were to do it every month,
yeah.
I mean, there would be maybe 6 defects that we had to argue. And the more that you have to argue, it's with a customer rep, the kind of longer and harder it is to get this changed.
Yeah, so if you have one back in February, there's no way you can argue that. And the odd thing is, it's still going to affect your account. That's the problem. If you're on the 12-month, it depends on how much you sell. If they're counting it 12 months back, yeah, it kind of sucks because you're you can't argue those.
If you sell more than 400 items in a 3-month period, then they just check a record for those
3 months.
3 months. But if you sell under 400 in 3 months, then they do the whole year.
Yeah, and you can't argue very much further than 3 months.
Okay, we have a question that came in through email. This is Luke. He says, as you evolved in your business over the years, have we noticed a significant shift to one type of sourcing over another? Are you finding yourself at more yard sales or thrift shops or estate sales or flea markets? I know this is going to be more of a personal preference based answer, but I'm curious how our styles and its preferences have evolved, since we started.
Interesting.
And then he said, as a follow-up, do you guys have any particular items that are a strict buy on site? Like if we see this, we have to buy them.
Yeah.
So
I find that we are shopping in thrift stores a lot because we have certain ones that we go to a lot near us.
I find it's more about. This is going to sound so cheesy. We've built a whole palette of places we go to, and really it depends on a mood.
Right.
Like lately, it's been about thrift stores because we've been working so hard at home. We don't want to take breaks at certain times to go to auctions or flea markets are Saturdays and we're busy on Saturdays. So
we have so much merchandise to list anyway.
Thrift stores have been good for us because we're just out and about doing other things and they're always open and we can just stop by.
Yeah.
But I definitely have periods where I'm like, I want to go to an event.
Yeah.
And auctions and estate sales are like events.
Right.
And they're fun, going to carnival.
Or if we're traveling, we like to go to estate sales and auctions because that's actually almost easier than finding thrift stores.
And actually just yesterday, that was a Saturday, I really had this urge to go to flea markets. There's this one big flea market about 40 minutes from where we live.
Yeah, it's not far.
That we haven't been to all a season just because it's a whole day thing. You know? And I've been really kind of thinking I want to carve out a Saturday and go to a flea market. Because I just have so much fun.
Yesterday was a little too hot and humid to be hanging out outside though.
But so anyway, it's kind of not an if only or it's kind of it depends on our mood, and that's what I always encourage everyone to do is just have all these places where you could go to, and then go to the one that fits for that day.
Right.
And then his question is are there anything as we see where it's we must buy those?
Right. I mean, we buy so much different stuff that it really depends on, the quality of the item. What is it? Like rugs. I always buy rugs, but it really wool rugs, but it's wool Persian antique rugs. Right. It's very specific what kind I'm looking for. So,
or if I've ever seen any gold,
gold,
100% gold,
gold
nuggets, I always buy those.
Gold bars, bullion, always buy that.
Hey guys, this is Bo and Polly down in North Carolina. Out on another day of picking, and we've got a question. First of all, thank you for the podcast. Been listening for several months, and I've learned a lot. We tend to stay in one location, one area where we live, but we often have found ourselves recently traveling to other locations, both for fun and for sourcing, mostly for eBay. Our question has to do with preference of location for sourcing. So understanding that there's, thrift stores and junk everywhere. That being said, if you were to pick a preference, would you rather be in a kind of remote, rural, small town kind of environment, or is it better in your experience to go to the more developed urban kind of area? Not necessarily a city, but perhaps the suburbs and surrounding areas of a kind of second-tier city. Well, let's just throw an example out there, like Charleston, South Carolina. If you were to go to that area, would you go within, say, 10 or 12, 15 miles of the downtown area, or would you go to the outskirts and stay in the kind of outlying regions of Charleston and kind of maybe even avoid the downtown an inner loop altogether. Just an opinion. Again, understanding that there's going to be stuff in both places, but if you had to choose, which ones would you guys choose? Thanks again for everything, and we'll be listening again next week. Thanks. Bye.
So this is a good question. So how do you choose, where to go?
Right.
And I think for us, instead of like choosing where to go because we're trying to find the best places to pick, we mainly just go places where we want to go.
Yeah.
And then happen to scavenge in those places.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't really do a lot of like vacation where we're like, we're going to go on vacation there.
Yeah.
We're more like, we're going here because of family, or we're going here because of work. And we end up in this new place and we're like, well, let's scavenge.
Let's look around.
And so that's kind of how we do it. So, if you're in North Carolina, I would just say, like pull out a map and it's within a day's, 8 hours of you.
Yeah.
And go to cool places.
Right.
Go to Savannah or, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us too, there are places where we avoid. Like, we do not like driving into Northern Virginia, D.C. metro area because the traffic and the density is horrible.
It's a meat grinder.
It's just awful on certain days, even on a Saturday, even on a Sunday. If we're like, oh, we really wanted to get this thing at IKEA. Oh, God, it's like, ugh.
Plus, I've never found like there's a good rule of thumb. Like if it's in a suburban area outside of a major urban area, that's always going to be better than this kind of place.
Right.
It's kind of like every area is just different unto itself. Like we live in a rural area and can find a lot of stuff, but we've been to other rural areas like in rural Florida and we haven't found anything. So it's really hard to say, these criteria will always mean X.
Right. And also, like, we're in a rural area that we live full time. So we have had the chance to really check places out over and over and over.
We know places where other people, if they were just coming here for a weekend,
they would never even see
They would never even know that they existed because they aren't listed in phone books or the internet or whatever.
Exactly. So
that's why our thing is go explore places because they look fun to you to do other things, and then just happen to scavenge, and then if it's a good place, just put that on your list for the future.
Like one time we drove to Ohio to pick up a lot of military stuff because it was this place in Columbus, and we were driving home and clearly we were going to scavenge on the way home, and we stopped at this big warehouse thrift store, independent thrift store in West Virginia, and we were like, this place has never been shopped.
Yeah.
No, like, eBay seller has ever shopped here because every single shelf, I mean, we were like, there's amazing stuff on every shelf. The people thought we were insane.
I think we spent about 3 hours there.
And you know how much we spent?
How much?
$50.
Yeah.
We spent $50 and we had 2 huge cartloads of the most random stuff, the most amazing, cool, fun stuff, and we were like, we never would have known about this place.
Yep.
We just happened to be driving by and we're like, oh, there's a little independent thrift store.
Yep.
Next time we go through West Virginia and on the Ohio border, I'll have to remember where it was. But, stuff like that happens.
All right. Well, thanks for being with us. It's this week. We hope that you got through some piles of stuff or some folders.
Or some shipping or some photographing.
I hope we were able to get you through some hard times.
Some trash elfing.
We post this every Sunday night, Monday morning, depending on our schedule. On Wednesdays, Ryan posts a what sells a video, so you can actually see some of these items that we actually sell, some of the weird, wacky stuff that people pay for.
You can subscribe to us through iTunes or through YouTube.
And if you're listening to this through YouTube, the conversation we have is actually at our blog at scavengerlife.com.
Yes.
We decided instead of having comments in 2 places, we are trying to funnel everyone into one place.
Yes.
Where we just ask everyone to just be nice to each other.
Be nice. We like to say thank you for anyone who sends us a tip through our tip jar, which is on the sidebar.
Yep, it's necessary, but very much appreciated.
Helps pay our internet and phone bills.
Yep. And that's it. So if you have a question or comment that you'd like to have us play on the podcast, you can always call us.
And the phone number again is 540-407-8486.
Okay. This podcast is ending.
In 3, 2, 1, 0.
Bye.